In our presentation today, we will be examining how organizations can extend the benefits of their investment in SAP to information workers via the integration with Microsoft technologies such as SharePoint Server. Presently, the majority of people in an organization do not take advantage of the tremendous investment in information and knowledge contained within their line of business application systems such as SAP. The lack of integration between their everyday productivity tools and the line of business systems has made it difficult for information workers to get to the data that they need. SAP customers value and rely on SAP for enterprise resource planning in finance, operations, human resources, and other activities, and most also rely on Microsoft productivity tools. The problem is the structured and highly valued content that is maintained so well in SAP is not readily available to information workers within their familiar unstructured contexts, such as creating a document or using a web portal, for example. This is not the result of a flaw in SAP. Rather, it results from increasing demands on information workers to provide the connections between the two worlds of structured and unstructured content. As an example, experience shows that a typical business process, such as creating a customer quote, involves SAP for about 15% of the activities, while the remaining 85% of activities, such as collaborating on documents, communicating with subject matter experts, and analyzing information, occur outside of and disconnected from SAP information and processes. In brief, the work of information workers spans across structured and unstructured worlds, but their tools do not. Combined, SAP and SharePoint benefits information worker productivity in several ways. It puts tools for creating, deploying, and modifying processes in the hands of business users so that they can rapidly build their own processes that augment SAP business applications. It helps to integrate tools for ad hoc communication, collaboration, and information management into SAP's structured work environment, empowering people to solve problems that fall outside the specifications of existing processes. And it enables people and organizations to easily design and deploy electronic forms, automating data capture and providing real-time visibility using familiar user interfaces. Let us examine this by walking through a simplified, fictitious, but representative business process or scenario. It will highlight the whats and the whys, and will define the business requirements for a multi-step workflow process with lots of chatter between two organizations. In our scenario, a buyer of one organization needs to share invoice information with its vendors. They want to automate this process using workflows, including verifications and approvals at necessary checkpoints. An employee at the vendor organization logs in securely to a supplier portal that has been used to expose vendor-specific invoices using Microsoft SharePoint Server. The employee initiates the process by looking up and selecting an invoice that was previously created and published to the portal, together with relevant data sourced from SAP. The employee chooses to update or make a change to the invoice. Once satisfied with the changes, the employee submits by saving the changed document to the portal. This kicks off an approval workflow within users of the organization. A supervisor at the vendor is alerted or notified by email, for example, or from a list of tasks, to the fact that there is a changed invoice document waiting for approval. Once verified and approved, this request is passed over to the buyer organization in their SAP line of business application, where an SAP approval workflow is activated. The buyer is alerted to the fact that there is a changed invoice waiting for verification and approval. They proceed to select the invoice associated with the workflow and complete the workflow approval in SAP. The result of the approval request is now routed to both parties to indicate successful acknowledgement of the exchange. The net result of this scenario is that invoice information was shared effectively between the buyer and its vendors. The process was fast, regulated, and automatically recorded in the portal and ERP system. Now that we know what the system integration needs are, the next concern is how this can be accomplished. The challenges are that there are a number of different types of integration, and it is difficult to know what is the most appropriate one to use in each circumstance. and a decision on the integration approach is required in order to drive the appropriate technology choices. Based on experience, there are a set of 4 strategy patterns that can be used to describe nearly all types of integration. The main purposes of this model is to understand the various integration levels and approaches available, determine which model is most appropriate for which situation, and understand the pros and cons of each approach. Presentation integration is the integration between applications through the presentation layer alone. This is accomplished either through some form of content aggregation such as a portal, or a more direct approach using embedded URL links or scraping content from an HTML page owned by the other application. Portal-oriented integration has become very popular thanks to the mushrooming use of the Internet. Using this approach, application architects and developers can integrate applications by presenting information from several local or partner applications within the same user interface. Application integration is the integration between applications at the application logic layer. These applications will generally be within a single line of business. When integrating between applications that reside in different business units, in other words, enterprise application integration or EAI, or even applications that reside in different companies, business-to-business scenarios, different approaches are appropriate there. The basic objective of application integration is to invoke a business transaction provided by an existing application in response to some event. The options available for integrating with an application are essentially dictated by the application being integrated. For example, the application may provide a programmable API support, file-based, message-based, or HTTP-based interfaces, or may only support a user interface. Business process orchestration is an approach to application integration that involves coordinating the activities that represent steps in a defined business process as a series of message and communication among those activities. To perform business process orchestration, it is important to understand each piece within the system and then understand that it is a combination of well-designed pieces acting in concert that brings the desired result. Data integration is the integration of the solution only at the data level. This does not involve the use of a requesting or owning application to address the request. Rather, the requests are addressed using features of the database or a separate application, such as a data broker. The main objective of data integration is to replicate changes to data sources that are caused by execution of a business transaction. All methods of data integration are applied directly to the data store, bypassing typical application business logic. Sometimes business rules are imposed at the database level by the use of database triggers or stored procedures. The lowest level of enterprise integration is the integration of data used within that organization. In some scenarios, this type of integration will provide the entire solution. However, it does not provide for more complex integration requirements, and so is likely to be used in conjunction with application or process integration. So this is what brings us to the hybrid application data integration scenario, which is the integration between both the application and data layers of the solution together. Usually this is between separate applications within the same line of business, but could be between business units or even other companies. Equally valid, and which is appropriate to our business scenario, is the hybrid presentation application integration combination. The foundation of any integration is basic connectivity to the appropriate layers. The connectivity will either be supporting the invocation of a business transaction provided by the application or catching an event in response to some user action within the application. Basic connectivity is typically technology-based. For example, the application supports an API such as SAP BAPIs or RFCs, or web services, or there are standard connectors or adapters available. If you have the ability to connect to the application, it is then a matter of making the correct method calls or formatting the data appropriately for a particular integration scenario. In addition, other architecture considerations need to be taken into account, including the need for workflow, integration communication styles, performance, and availability. Based on our experience, we can suggest an overall methodology and approach for integration pattern usage. Firstly, understand the overall business process and the integration requirements by identifying representative scenario instances, much like the one we walked through today, and capture the system use cases. Define an integration strategy that takes into account a number of things. Any existing corporate standards that may be in place for integration. For example, some organizations have chosen to adopt a service-based architecture or enterprise service bus. Take into account vendor or product best practices. For example, if access is needed to SAP application functionality that is not yet been service enabled, SAP recommends wrapping remote function calls or BAPI interfaces as web services. Direct access to RFCs or BAPIs is possible, but it's not encouraged. Secondly, characterize the scenarios and requirements by identifying who the actors are, what the needs for cooperating cross-system workflows are, whether it's a multi-step state-based communication style, whether the systems need to be mediated or decoupled via workflow, what kind of communication style is it, request, reply, how chatty is it, and finally, what kind of communication style, whether synchronous or asynchronous. Thirdly, based on the previous two steps, it should now be possible to identify which one or more of the 4 strategy patterns are applicable. No single strategy is appropriate across an entire infrastructure or solution. So when is it appropriate to use which strategy? And this provides the logic for the pattern selection. So for example, presentation is most appropriate for integrating or aggregating presentation content and is most often used in situations where a portal is called for to provide custom or personalized content presentation. Application is most appropriate for integrating data where business rules are used to filter the content or manage the update of the content. Data integration is most appropriate for integrating data where business rules are not required. And lastly, hybrid is most appropriate for situations requiring multiple capabilities. Finally, it is now possible to map the integration strategy patterns to lower level integration patterns and their approaches and their options and the various technology components that realize them. And this way, one derives the solution architecture, both logical and physical, and what the options and alternatives are. SAP customers appreciate the tremendous value of the SAP systems, but they also recognize that they can get more out of them by bringing SAP data into the everyday activities of information workers. As a case in point, and for the business scenario described today, products and technologies such as Microsoft's SharePoint server provide a rich infrastructure for integration of the two worlds in which information workers live, the worlds of structured and unstructured activities. This presentation has described both what is possible and an approach at a high level. For more information about how to achieve the benefits of integration, please feel free to contact us at Ideaca.